Hello, welcome back to Tabletop Republic's YouTube channel. My name is Seb.K and this is Assisted Fire. What is Assisted Fire? Well, it's the show where we go through the finer ins and outs and tactical unit breakdowns, that kind of thing, for Infinity the game, getting really deep into the game with my experiences with it and some of the factions. The plan is to go through all of the factions eventually and do a really in-depth unit breakdown for each one to help new players and experienced players alike. And yeah, I've been waiting to do O-12 for a very, very long time because I did not expect to enjoy them as much as I do. The reality is that when I first saw them, I thought they were basically just sort of Pano plus, and Pano's playstyle of just being the big guns has never really appealed to me. But, I saw the models and they looked really, really good, and I couldn't help but be super interested in them. So I thought, well, I'll give them a go. And something very unexpected happened. I found that they might be one of my, well, probably my favorite faction in the game. They're kind of tied for Tohar at the moment. And why is that? Well, that's because they are extremely flexible and extremely efficient, and they allow you to play many, many, many different types of lists and come up with any strategies you really want without being hamstrung by their limitations as a faction. Something that you can do very easily with Tohar, without having too many glaring weaknesses. I really, really enjoyed playing these guys, and I racked over 40 games with them. Obviously, that's been cut short a bit. Thank you, COVID, for that. But that's a lot of games, and I was able to try out a lot of different things. I know there was many more games that I didn't log as well. Those are just the ones that I've got currently logged on Comlog. So I think I've got a pretty good idea of where these guys sit and how, well, as I said, they can be played in many ways. So I can't really tell you how they should be played, which is one of the joys of the faction. They're just awesome in the sense that you can really just do what you want with how you kind of units you like to use, and they're just so efficient. That's going to be the theme as we go through it. So what we're going to do today is the video is going to be broken down into two because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of profiles. I mean, it's really exploded outwards, and I'll probably have to do that with other factions as well when I get round to them, because there's just so many units. So what we're looking at today is just light infantry, and you can see here there's a fair few, right? And then future videos we'll do war bands and skirmishes and medium infantry, heavy infantry, remotes and tags, that sort of thing. I just want to be able to do that because if I was to try and do all of that in one video, it would probably take too long. And I might rush, and I don't want to rush through things because I think these guys deserve a lot of thought and a lot of effort. So let's start with the first profile, the Kappa Unit. These are your line troops. They are the cornerstone of any nutritious army list. They are the ones that you go to when you need to fill slots. Now, we're talking about vanilla O-12 today, and as with all the other factions, your line troops aren't really your go-to profile when you've got so many others to choose from, and you don't have access to link teams. So, which is what Kappas really, really shine at. Obviously, the line troops shine better in the link team where they get that bump to BS and plus one burst and all that good stuff. So in this faction, you're going to be looking at only a couple of profiles that don't get, that have a job role that isn't done better elsewhere. But looking across the stat line, BS12 is above average. Be quiet, Pano players, please. I know you guys think that's the go-to and you will accept nothing less, but ballistic skill 12 on the line troop is actually ridiculous. Phys 10, all that normal stuff. Whip 13 is pretty standard in armor 1 and what you'd expect from a line troop, 4-4 move and so on. The key interesting difference between them and other line troops is this immunity shock, which does, it makes a huge difference. I mean, a lot of the time you're putting, you expect to put line troops down very easily, and that shock immunity means that some of these guys can be picked up. Doesn't matter quite as much in vanilla O-12. Obviously, if they're in a link team, and then they might have a big gun like a missile launcher, a multi-sniper rifle, that kind of thing. And you might want to pick them back up, and that shock immunity means they're not going down in one hit. But in vanilla O-12, it's just a nice bonus. It's not really something that you're going to be seeing that often. Out of all the profiles here, obviously, these are above average ballistic skill, but you probably shouldn't be getting heavy machine gun, multi-sniper. Missile launcher in vanilla O-12, you're not getting a +1 burst for that missile launcher, so burst 1 on BS-12 isn't amazing, and you're spending your SWC on that. Same with the sniper rifle, same with the HMG to a certain extent. You might still want a forward observer if you've got an extra couple of points, but interestingly, a forward observer for the Kappas does, because he has a deployable repeater, it actually costs +2 points instead of +1, which is the standard for a forward observer line troop in other factions, so that is a little bit more pricey. And the paramedic, of course, if you just want a budget doctor, although the lambda is only 1 more point, I believe, and the lambda's got a higher whip and it's just better at the job, so you're probably going to be only looking at either the lieutenant, although O-12 has easily some of the best lieutenant options in the game. There aren't super tons of them, but they're all really good in their own ways. So you probably won't be looking at the lieutenant, and it costs 1 SWC. So that's a no-go. So the big standout here is the hacker, the standard hacking device. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time referring to N3 in terms of rules, because, you know, things are totally different now. But back in N3, this unit just could do everything, and it was ridiculously undercosted, and it was 15 points then. And now the hacking device has lost some utility, can't do all the things it could do before, like assisted fire, and things like that, but it's got a price drop from that 15 down to 12, and you know, the programs you get on the hacking device is still really handy, and you have many options to put repeaters out there. So having a cheap budget hacker for 12 points is really not a bad shout, especially seeing as you know, you might just want an extra specialist in there. So yeah, so that 12 points is just really, really good. So Kappa Unit's very good line troop, and you know, exceptional really in the grand scheme of things. Let's move on to the Alpha Unit, possibly my candidate for easily top 5 lieutenants in the game, even though we'll talk about some shortcomings in a minute, but it's still an incredible amount of useful stuff packed into a really not that expensive profile. It's gone through some changes since the beginning of N4 and when the app was first updated. But what we've settled on here is still very good, still comparable to the N3 version, just really good across the board. This CC value of 21, it's effectively 2 units on a base. You've probably seen the model where it's a man and his dog robot. Well, it's not actually a dog, it's a bodyguard robot, but you know. A lot of people like to convert it so it's got one of the dog models and stuff like that. So yeah, so we've got really good stats here. Obviously, you don't want your alpha unit to be going in and doing a lot of shooting, so that BS11 doesn't really matter too much, especially seeing as it has decent template options and shotguns, which give you the +6. So, you know, it's not too bad. The CC21 is crazy, especially combined with the fact that it has guard, which we'll go into in a minute. Phys 12, you know, bumped up. Not absolutely incredible, and used to be bumped up by the guard buff. Isn't anymore, but it's still very good to have that ability, and it's the martial arts level 2 that give you the +1 physique anyway, so that's going to be you know, a physique of 13, so that's pretty good, isn't it? Whip 14, again, really good. You're often going to be taking this as a lieutenant, as I'll go into in a minute. And looking across here, the only thing that's really odd, of course, is that huge base size of Silhouette 4, which can be not so great. Makes it difficult to hide, but you've got to remember this unit can go prone. So putting it on top of a large, you know, or a medium-sized building and going prone will make it very difficult to get to. But yeah, obviously the Silhouette 4, it's hard to defend, it's hard to block it off on corners with Silhouette 2 models, which is meaning that, you know, it's going to be hard for them to, it's going to be hard for you to block off their advance from things like infiltrators and impersonators and things. But it does have some built-in defenses against those anyway, starting with the biometric visor, makes it easier to see through those impersonation models. Then you've got things like guard, which mean that they can't really engage very easily. When they come around the corner against you, you just have a myriad of options. You're able to shoot back, you know, with a fairly decent number on a 17, probably, if they're within 8 inches. Or you're looking at guard being able to be used within 8 inches with combination of that martial arts, meaning that they're going to be Well, it's going to be pretty nasty, isn't it? I might have messed up. Actually, I believe martial arts 2 is +2 physique, so that actually goes up to 14. They're going to be using the DA CCW, so that's, not nice. So they come around the corner. What are they going to do? You've got good options across the board. Maybe they'll try and get into CC with you, but you're still very good in it. Maybe they're going to try and dodge in, but you've got, template options. You can see what they do. It's so damn good. It's a tough nut to crack. Yes, only one wound, but for the number of defensive options that it has, that's really, really good. Obviously, talking about the BS attack +1 burst, you're not getting that in ARO, of course, but I don't know when you're going to be able to use it offensively, because that's not really what you want to be doing with the Alpha Unit. You don't want to be going out there and trying to shoot things with it, because it's going to be your Lieutenant 90% of the time, and that's never a good idea. It can still lose, even if it's very good at the things it does. But if someone's come around the corner and there's a failed attack against you and they're still alive, and you're the only thing that can go deal with it, well, you could just level that light shotgun at a burst 3 at them, or that nanopulsar at a burst 2, so that's pretty good. Counterintelligence may be one of the most useful things in the game as we currently stand. It doesn't matter how many units you're playing in your army, whether that be 10 or 15, they can still take an order away from you if you're going first. Well, counterintelligence means that they're only taking one order away from you, and that may not be that useful in the long run. They may be thinking, well, I don't want to do that, so if I'm only being able to take one order away, so that's really, really good. It just protects and makes, again, though, 12 more flexible when you're building army lists. Courage is obviously good. You just don't want to be running around where you don't want to be. Passing whip checks, that kind of thing. Discover +3 again, as I said, great against infiltrators. So we've gone through that. So we're looking down here. Obviously, you've got Strategos level 1, which turns the lieutenant order into an extra order, which basically means when you get this unit, you get 2 orders. And if you look at the points cost for this unit, you're pretty much getting 2 models worth out of it anyway, right? So you're spending the points cost on 2 line troops, for example, and you're getting 2 orders, and you're getting all these benefits. Yes, we've talked about the shortcomings, but it's still fantastic. Whip 14 Lieutenant, +1 command token as well, which is an addition that it got in this version. Really useful for vanilla O-12. They need to use a lot of coordinated orders and things like that. Coordinated hacking is super viable with them because they've got so many hacking options that it's just really, really good to have that extra token lying around. That the Alpha Unit is just a phenomenal lieutenant all round, and almost a bit too good, if I'm being honest. They are extremely, extremely good. So, Lynx Unit. Now, this is okay, you're going to notice a theme with O-12. So a lot of these profiles can be easily compared to profiles in other armies. Sometimes they fill a particular role, and their stat line is sort of stripped down in order to fill that role. Lynx Unit is very easily compared to the Hexa, and the Hexa unit from from Pano, because it does a similar job. It has hidden deployment, it has the mimetism -6, and it has a similar loadout as well. And you'll see the stats lines are very similar too. You've got BS13, a Whip 14, which is better than the Hexa as far as I know, because it's Pano, so it's probably worse. Surprise attack, obviously all the good stuff that you'd expect from a unit of this type. No forward deployment. You've got that in other units, which is a theme you get with O-12. You'll get a unit that does a very specific thing, which is, in this case, hide, surprise your opponent, and shoot. But I really need to talk about how incredibly useful that is. And in my 3, almost 4 years of playing Infinity, I've discovered just how useful the ability to hide a model like this really is, and it's almost become an auto-include in some ways, because what it does is it just takes away the sting of your opponent's attacking and surprise options, where we're talking about drop tubes or their own hidden deployment options, or things that can get up the table really fast to go do some damage. It basically means that you could just lie in wait in the position. They don't know where you're going to be. You're going to be in deployment zones, so you often don't have to worry about sensor, things like that. And when they do get into the perfect position, usually out of cover, then you pop up the multi-sniper or the plasma carbine. Those 2 units specifically are very good for that surprise shock to your opponent but they really didn't see it coming. They might have spent 5 orders getting their model into a position. Then you reveal this guy. If you manage to catch them out of cover, you're going to be hitting on a 16. Yes, it's 1 dice, but you know, sniper rifles, multi-snipers hit really hard. So it's not something they're going to enjoy being on the receiving end of. And it's such an arse covering move model to put into your army. You know, it really just means that you can go up against most people and not have to worry too much. As long as he's positioned properly and overlooking your important units, you don't have to worry too much about someone sneaking into your back line and doing damage from an awkward angle. So yes, very, very, very good unit, very well costed for what it is. And I would say a lot of the time, just so useful. This bottom profile is that tweak that I was talking about to some O-12 profiles, where it's that role that you're very familiar with, but they have something just a little bit extra spice. And this profile down here is very interesting. A specialist operative with a plasma carbine and an assault pistol that costs 29 points. My only gripe about this, because you know plasma's awesome, so it's hard to gripe too much, but my only gripe about this is that he starts in your deployment zone. But as a backup shooter and as a backup attacking piece, and as a surprise defensive piece, this is a really good model. So if you've spent your SWC elsewhere, but you still want backline coverage, this is a really good model to take. And of course, the specialist operative might be really good late game as well. You know, to push the buttons in the final turn, or just as a backup shooter. Yeah, very, 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 very good. So Lynx Unit, very efficient, very stripped down, but very, very good at what it does. Deva Functionaries. Weird inclusion to O-12. I don't know if you guys know a lot about the lore. At some point, I might do a lore video just summing up, you know, the finer points of a lot of the factions. But in lore terms, O-12 has sway over Aleph, right? Basically, a lot of the Aleph units get their equipment from O-12. They get equipment that they're sanctioned to have, and of course, O-12 can call on them and and Aleph units to be used at you know, for various operations, which is why you'll see a couple of Aleph units in here. And the Deva Functionary is probably included in here to fill a gap. It gives you one of the Msv2 options because you only have 2 in the entire faction. One is on the Epsilon unit, which we'll get to when we cover medium infantry, but the other one is here. So let's have a look at why you might want to take these. Some of these are a bit strange. Okay, so you know, looking across the stat line, BS12 nothing special, CC of 15. Well, it's not going to be doing close combat really. It's not what you want. Fizz 11 again, not so great. The Whip 15 is really, really good, and we'll talk about the hacker profile. That's really comes into its own. Arm 2 is above average, which is quite nice. You've got 1 wound and no wound incapacitation, which is effectively 2 wounds, but this model is not shock immune. The number 2 is irrelevant because you're never going to be putting this into a link team. The courage is just nice to have. So it's effectively a 2 wound model. Obviously, shock is everywhere in this game, so not having shock immunity on this may mean that the no wound incap is negated a lot of the time, but it's still not that bad to have. It's okay. Combi Rifle, never take this guy. Overly priced, not really worth the time of day. There are much better units for 23 points, namely the Cycops, which are just phenomenal. And we'll talk about those in a minute. So we've got the hacking device. This is a great hacker. Really, really good hacking. Really, really good hacker. It's Whip 15. It's pretty reliable. It's going to get the hacking off pretty easily, and with that extra durability as well, it's not badly priced for, you know, 28 points. So that's one you might want to do. The sensor here is probably worth mentioning simply because it is a sensor. This is one of only 2 sensors again in O-12. The other one is on the robot, the copper bot, but we're going to talk about that because that really is the better option. And when we get to remotes and so on, that's really the option you should take for sensor. It's more mobile, it's faster, you know, it just does everything better for cheaper. And its remote's more durable in a way as well. So again, not really liking that. So the Msv2 Spitfire, we really need to talk about that. It's only 1 SWC, which is great. As I said, it's quite durable, but it is also quite expensive at 33 points. It's about the same cost as the Epsilon unit. But the Spitfire is a more versatile gun for those midfield skirmishes and dealing with light, medium, and even heavy units sometimes. In the midfield, it's more dice, it's more reliable, but again, this is only a ballistic skill 12 model, and there's an HMG option on that Upsilon unit, which I really just favour over that, just for its extended range, better ballistic skill on the Epsilon unit when we get there as well. But this is a thing. It is an option. I'm not a massive fan of this, but it is your only other MSV2 option, so you should consider it for that. But I really do think there are better options and things you can take in this army that will deal with, those mimetism -3, mimetism -6 models. You've got other ways to get around that. You can still do template options, close combat, things like that. You don't have to go for MSV2 all the time as your problem solver in that case. So yeah, maybe leave that one at home. But the Hacker, not so bad. Team Sirius, this is an excellent unit. I mean, a really excellent unit. So much fun, great model. Anything that has a heavy riot stopper in O-12, which is one of their unique weapons, and it's really really damn good. It's terrifying, but anyway, let's get back to the game, because I'm just gushing over this unit. They're too damn good. So CC, not important, you won't be using them for CC anyway. Ballistic skill 12 is above average, and is average, but for this point's cost, more than acceptable. Fizz 10 again for the dodges. Well, maybe you want to be shooting back with this unit instead of dodging most of the time. Whip 13, good for pressing buttons, that is average. Arm 2 is above average, and Silhouette 2, this is on the main series member, by the way. We'll talk about the bot in a minute, but yeah. For deployment 8, this is where we start to see a really interesting theme with O-12, is that they can put out an absolute mountain of midfield units. They can have an exceptional midfield presence. I think they might have the best midfield presence in the game, with other units that all gel really well together in midfield and can defend each other really well, like the Gangbuster. And what else? We've got the Crushers now. We've got... what else are we talking here? Oh, Andromeda's been added as well, which we'll get to in a bit. So yeah, they can put out some really, really good midfield units, and a whole ton of them that can support each other. And Team Sirius is really kind of the linchpin of that, where you've got a mimetism modifier there, which makes it tough to deal with. You've got the Sirius bot as well, which is another horrible option. And when you combine that with the weapon loadouts here, you get some really interesting things. So the base loadout with the boarding shotgun, well, the only one I probably wouldn't take is this, unless you need a point. But really, you should be taking the forward observer version if you want boarding shotguns. So many things you can do with this. Obviously, it's a specialist. It starts up the field, so it's a reliable one. Flash pulse is way better than most of the other options. If they're further than 8 inches, you should flash pulse them. Try to win that face-to-face roll, because this is only a one-way model. And that, so it's so much more important to have that flash pulse than it is to not have the flash pulse, because the boarding shotgun model is only really effective out to 8 inches, and if you get attacked over that, well, you've got an option here on the forward observer. The boarding shotgun, yeah, great. Obviously, decharges, really, really, really handy. There are some funny things you can do with decharges. For example, you've got both of these models, and if they both get into close combat, I'm not sure that would be your best option, but if you really wanted to, you could get them both into close combat, get the extra dice, and decharges used to have a minus to be used in close combat. They no longer do, so you can throw 2 dice on a target, maybe after you've glued it, for example, put it in a mobilized state, and throw 2 dice on CC-14. Probably one of those is going to hit, and anything that gets hit with a decharge usually melts. So that's still a really good option here. It's just really, really damn good for 25 points. And the main thing about the Team Sirius is all the utility that the Sirius bot gives you on top of these good profiles. I mean, I might even take this profile, almost would take this profile if the Sirius bot wasn't included, because it's still such a good overall midfield unit that does a lot of things. But with the Sirius bot included, I mean, this unit's fantastic. The Sirius bot stats are nothing to write home about, but the equipment is very, very good. I mean, G-synchronized, peripheral synchronized comes with a lot of its own benefits anyway. As I mentioned, extra dice in close combat, things like that. the ability to move as one unit is more efficient, things like that. So that's obviously really good. Courage is obviously a thing because it's a robot dog. Um, the immunity shock, of course, because you don't want to be taken out too easily, and that means it can get repaired. And O-12 does have some decent engineers, or at least fairly good engineers. So that's still a thing, and it would be worth picking up a Sirius bot because of the threat they pose. Mimetism to go along with the Team Sirius, main Sirius guys mimetism, which is cool. And the right stopper. So there are just so many combinations you can do with these two, which brings me back to this hacking device model. So the hacking device model is made extra scary by the presence of the Sirius bot, and here's why. You come around the corner with the hacking device model, and you just have so many options. Your opponent then has to react to you, and they have to wonder whether you're going to shoot with a submachine gun, which can still be nasty. Don't forget they're acting as one unit, so when they shoot together. So the chances are you might get hit with a submachine gun. If they choose to dodge, you might get hit with a submachine gun and a heavy right stopper. They might dodge a heavy right stopper, but still get hit by the dice from the submachine gun, which is horrible. If they choose to, they might have to choose to reset because they're worried about you hacking them, and then of course you shoot them and glue them anyway. Which just means it's terrifying. They really can't make a good decision. Whatever you do, whatever they choose to do, you just do the most efficient opposite. So it's really, really good. And of course, it's a specialist as well. So the only reason why you wouldn't take this is if you wanted that extra template option, the better defensive option in the flash pulse. The decharge is obviously good for things, and you didn't have that extra 0.5 SWC to spend. But it's a toss-up for me between these two. If I have the extra points, and I want an extra hacker, because you can definitely lay down a lot of hacking, especially with something I forgot to mention, that the Sirius bot is also a repeater, which combined with some of the really good hackers in this faction really helps you to extend your hacking range across the battlefield. So that's really, really good. But yeah, if depending on what I'm doing with my strategy, it's either one of these two, but they're phenomenal profiles. The Red Fury is interesting. There are people who like it, and I could see why, but I really don't like putting decent guns, especially ones that cost 1 SWC, on a unit that only has 1 wound. Because Infinity is a game where the dice are very, very swingy. There's a big difference, the possibilities of dice rolls. There's nothing that's really guaranteed in this game, and despite throwing 4 dice at Southern, even with the mimetism, you might just take a bad ARO, and if she goes down, he goes down. So you don't want to take, the risk, really, in my opinion, of making this your main shooter, and really just picking the right targets and using 2 of the profiles below. But I know that some people really get the use out of this. I mean, considering that the Red Fury can be used in a similar way to the submachine gun and the boarding shotgun combined with the Sirius bot, and coming around and making them make difficult choices. But it's not quite as good at it, I think you really should just play your cards right, use the shorter range profiles and get them in the right position, pick your fights well, and this unit will just excel. You can also use this for Rambo runs. I mean, I've done it before where I've run up the table, seen an angle I could get in and just get a few line troops and remove some orders. They're very, very good at that. So just an exceptional unit all round. Talking about this unit has made me want to do a proper strategy breakdown for O-12, which I'll do. I'll probably use it with the aid of Tabletop Simulator. So you guys can look forward to that, and I'll show you how I do Rambo runs and things with Team Sirius and build up midfield defense and that kind of thing. Cyber Ghost. So one of these profiles is good. I don't think they're both trash, so to speak, but I really do think there's only one profile here that stands out that you're going to want to take and make space for. Across the top, nothing special except for that Whip 14, decent hacker. Stealth is also really good. Stealth on a hacker basically means that you can run in range of enemy repeaters, and as long as you're not doing anything like hacking or whatever, any non-stealth action, you can actually go through that enemy repeater to get to the favorable position. And they can't anti-hack you, they can't ARO hack you because you've got stealth. And if you just move through it, they can't ARO you. Then when you're in the position you want to be in, you can do whatever you want to do. So that is quite good. Although this unit is starting at the back and so on, it's not really one of those midfield forward deploying skirmishes or anything like that. So I don't know how often that will turn up, but it may be useful, especially if someone's throwing repeaters at you offensively, and they've put a bunch of them maybe near your hackers or in your deployment zone, and you would just want to get out of the range. You know, the fact that it has stealth is really good. Let's talk about the lesser of the two profiles here. Oh, I forgot to mention BTS 6 is just great, especially on a hacking unit. Obviously, you want BTS 6, you want a high BTS, and that's really, really good here. So yeah, let's talk about this profile. So the bottom profile, which I think is the not so useful profile, it's only a killer hacker. Yes, you have decent repeater coverage in this faction, but other than the fact that it's a, you know, it's, I think, I don't know, I just don't like the cost of this unit. For just being a killer hacker that doesn't really do anything, doesn't really go out. It's not a reliable specialist. It's not really, you know, you're not going to run your 4-4 model out there. You're probably going to have more efficient models to do that. And the killer hacking means that you've got to get your pitchers in range, or they've got to get in range of your repeaters. So as an additional hacker, if you want to play the hacking game, I can understand you taking this unit, but there are other killer hackers as well. Namely the Gangbuster, who's a very good one, slightly less whip, but again has that forward deployment, more of that utility. This in the backfield, not so great. Now a lot of people were probably going, yes, but it has pitchers. Yeah, but a BS11 model with a pitcher isn't that handy, guys. It's just not. You know, you only get two of the damn things. Yeah, you can possibly reload it, and I have used the Cyber Ghost that way, reloading those pitchers. But if it's just a killer hacker, it's only targets that it can really do damage with whilst using its own pitches is other hackers. So it's just not got the utility of the one above for 3 more points. So for 3 more points and 1 SWC, sorry, 0.5 SWC, you just get a world of utility here. The most important part is that this is not just a hacking device, it's a hacking device plus, which gives you access to white noise. That is so useful. I'm probably not going to be able to describe all of the ways. I'm probably going to forget something about white noise. So what does white noise do? White noise lets you put a template out in the zone of control of this unit and or your repeaters, by the way, which creates a 0 visibility zone for models with MSV of any type. So a lot of the time, I mean, MSV models are scary in this game. And O-12 have an absolute ton of units that benefit from mimetism -3, -6. So you want to be able to protect those from units with MSV, and this is your way of doing it. When combined with Team Sirius being up the table and their extended hacking range for you, you can very easily put a white noise template down where you need it to be, which shuts down their MSV units and really lets you push up the table without worrying too much about it. There are lots of advanced tricks you can do with white noise, which I'd like to go into if we do a strategy, not if, when we do a strategy video for O-12, looking at some tactics and table setups and things like that, where you can, you know, really take advantage of that. But on top of all of that, of course, you know, this unit is a regular hacking device, and regular hacking devices are basically what old assault hacking devices were, in the sense that they have all of the nasty immobilization abilities, and you've got the ability to spotlight people. Hacker Device Plus can also use Cyber Mask, which is only usually available on the Killer Hacking Device. So that basically means that the Killer Hacking Device, one of its main utilities, is already on this profile. So you might as well just use this profile. And you really should make space for it, because it just adds so much good utility to your army. And, you know, the scariness of having a decent hacker in the backfield with all of those cool hacking programs. That can put, and the Whip 14 that can reliably put them down on enemy units, is just brilliant. So yeah, this is a really, really good support piece. And the only reason why you probably wouldn't take one is because you've got so many cool options in this faction that it may not make its way in. But I really, you know, it's totally worth building a strategy around this unit, because it's very, 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 very good. Specialized Support Unit Lambda, Standard Engineer Doctor. Whip 14 is better than most of the Standard Engineer Doctors in the game, but they have a points increase for that. It's like 1 or 2 over most of the Engineers and Doctors in the game. Obviously, the Engineer now gets Gizmo Kit, you know, which is a medikit for robots, basically. So that's cool. They always had Decharges and Deactivator, which is a very, very strange bit of equipment. Not going to go into it now, but it's in an odd place, that bit of equipment, and I might go into detail about that if we come across it again. But yeah, pretty good, pretty solid Engineer Doctor, obviously lots of utility. Most of the time, you're probably going to be taking the Doctor because there's another engineer option in this faction that just excels, as it does in all factions. And I'm sure a lot of you know what that is. And we'll talk about him when we get to him. But yeah. So yeah, other than that, nothing particularly special. The skill 11, all that stuff. So you know, you guys know what doctors and engineers do. I would like to say that there is a couple of ways to build O-12 lists, and sometimes I will start by thinking about building the list around a doctor or around an engineer, because what you can do, you know, is go, right, I'm going to run a very remote heavy list here, have a couple of engineers taking this guy, maybe taking the Monstrucker as well. There's the star of the show. And then running all the remotes and having as much engineering coverage as possible. And hacking as well. That's very, very viable. And also the doctors, you could actually run a whole bunch of meat bags and just have all the guys that have wounds instead, and running your whole list around the wounds characteristic. And that's another way to build it. In fact, that's the two ways to build lists in Infinity, the game. After you've built towards the mission, because the mission is all important, you could be thinking about, yeah, I don't want to have to take both a doctor and engineer to keep my guys alive. Let's maybe just take one of each and then build a list around that to make sure that that doctor gets the most use or that engineer gets the most use. So there you go. Monstrucker. It's hard to really cover the breadth and depth of how exceptionally good this unit is. It has very, very little drawbacks because you're paying so little points for just utility, just insane amounts of utility across the board. So yeah, strap in because this might be a long one. I'll try to get through it. So looking across here, pretty standard. CC stat 16 is only something you're going to worry about when you use the decharges. So he's all right in that, you know. That might be a thing, but there are so many things that we are doing before that you probably won't come up too much. Basically 11 is pretty standard, but for a unit this cheap, it's, you know, it's all right. Phys 12 is much higher than usual. Don't know why. Makes him a decent dodger as well for some strange reason. You know, but at least I have decent dodger. Whip 13, standard, decent. Arm 1, wounds 1, and all the good stuff. Deactivator, strange bit of a kit, but you know, it's there. Gizmo kit, obviously great. Long, you know, short, medium range engineering is always cool. Engineer, obviously, climbing plus. Climbing plus, wow. So climbing plus is useful. It's just so damn useful on an engineer or any utility model like this, any support model like this, because the ability to then put him behind a building way away, you know, in a what would be normally an awkward spot for a unit when it needs to run around and do things is not that awkward a spot for this guy. You can have somebody up on a building, you know, a sniper, main shooter, whatever. If that unit, being a robot, of course, or one of your remotes, which is, you know, a TR bot, total reaction bot, one of those up on the building, when it goes down, remotes now go prone. So there's a really good chance that it'll be safe behind the lip of a building or something, and then he climbs up the wall, you know, provided you've cleared out all of the AROs, he climbs up the wall from his little hidey hole and goes and repairs it. Brilliant. Climbing plus is brilliant. It also allows it to keep up with a couple of key units in this game, in O-12 specifically, with the Zeta unit. Tag, which also has climbing plus, means that he can get to wherever it got to, which is really handy. Also, who else am I forgetting that has climbing plus that's really, really good to... Oh yes, I mentioned it already, the TR bot, which also has climbing plus, which is just, oh, it's so good. But yeah, the engineer then, you know, you don't have to worry about that robot going somewhere that he can't get to because he can always get to it because he has climbing plus as well. So it's really, really good. So I don't know whether you're really going to take these other two profiles, because this one, the submachine gun for 12 points, does everything you need it to. You don't need your engineer to be a long-range shooter, and he has all the tools to defend himself up close if somebody wants to come around and assassinate him. Also, the drop bears, you know, if he hasn't got anything to do, because I forgot to mention, one of the only, if the only drawback to this unit is that he's irregular, which also drops his points. But, you know, you get a lot of, you can get a lot of orders in O-12, and having an irregular unit that could also do things in the background is still fine. The drop bears, which he can be doing. He can be throwing drop bears and further defending his position and or the position of your lieutenant or other units when he's not doing anything. So when he's not engineering stuff, he's just strengthening your defense. I mean, it's just great in every way. He's chain rifle. He's got the close range option. If the submachine gun's better, he can use that. Submachine gun does give him an offensive option when he needs it to. So yeah, he's really good. Like it's really good. I mean, why wouldn't I take the other ones? Well, okay, quickly, the boarding shotgun, yes, it's more reliable, but you lose the drop bears, which I think are just too useful to ignore. Um, EM grenades, which is okay, he's an all right thrower, um, but really, you're not going to get, there are just so many other ways to get the effects of an EM grenade with a faction that has potential mass hacking and things like that. If you want to shut things down, there are other ways to do it. And I don't think this guy's going to get that much use out of his EM grenades. The adhesive launcher is cool, but there's tons of them in O-12, and guys who are probably better at using it. And the same goes, it's very similar with this unit as well. I mean, the only difference is that he's got a 360 visor. But what's he doing? He's probably going to maybe, if he's defending you in the back line, that's what you want. Well, if you want a 360 visor defensive unit and this guy, you can get this guy and a Warcore for cheaper than this one, right? So it's really not that useful. And you've got other things, but these options are covered elsewhere in the faction. So if you want the engineer, you want the best possible engineer, you want a guy to be doing more than what he's just designed to do, then take this one, 12.1. Absolutely amazing. And it's crazy that all the factions get this because in many cases it makes their original engineer kind of obsolete, as it does here. So, I don't know how you balance that. It's just too good. If I was to balance it, I would actually do one small thing. I'd drop his whip down to 12, which might make people want to take a normal engineer. But I'm glad that he's not. I'm glad that he's whip 13 because he's awesome and he's a great model. So yeah. Nauf used to be terrible. Nauf was meme bad. He was pretty awful, pretty lackluster because he had a whole bunch of conflicting abilities. Which he was an okay sniper, but there were better snipers than him. And then he was expensive, and he had a bunch of close range options that a sniper should never need. Or probably won't need 90% of the time. But he's had a bit of an overhaul, and I actually quite like him. And the only reason why he wouldn't get picked a lot of the time is that it's still the MSV1, but they could bump it up to MSV2. Otherwise, you just take him all the time, especially over the Epsilon unit, which he's very close to in the stats line because he's got better CC than the Epsilon. He's same ballistic skill, probably same physique. I'm not sure, but probably. Whip 13 is the same as well, I believe. Armor 1, the Epsilon is Armor 2. Wounds 1, all of the usual. As I mentioned, MSV1 is not as good as MSV2, but it's still way more useful now. With the ability to still see through smoke, although the dice is not going to be great for you at that point. You might be able to get a warband who's come out and smoke. They're impetuous, so they haven't got cover, which means you're hitting on a 16 9% of the time. Minus the smoke bonus, you're going to be hitting on a 10. So it gives you something. It gives you an option to use against those, and it still can be a deterrent against people throwing smoke, in silly places. Having him around, just the way the Epsilon does, just the Epsilon's better at picking those kind of units off. But on the offense, he is way more effective. So BS attack +1 burst, that is huge. This guy with a range shooting double action rounds with his multi-sniper, 3 dice at a time, that's pretty good now. And it gives him something unique, none of the other snipers have a +1 burst on the BS attack. Now it's cool. It's very cool. And obviously he's always got shock, which is great because that's double action rounds with shock. I mean, can't, you can't hate that. You can't hate that. Mimetism -3 is great, same as the Epsilon. Obviously, really good. So you don't want to be tagged. He is not shock immune though. Well, the Epsilon is shock immune and bioimmune, whereas Nauf has neither of those. The reason why I'm comparing him to the Epsilon is that he's only like a point cheaper, or the same points as the Epsilon sniper variant. So they are directly comparable in this faction. Stealth, cool. Terrain total, well, that's a niche thing, but it's awesome. If he needs to reposition through difficult terrain, it's a niche case. But he does have a heavy pistol, which, yeah, you know, cool if you're that close. It also gets +1 burst, so burst 3 heavy pistol. It just basically means that he doesn't have a bad range, you know. Heavy pistols are decent, and they cover his 0 to 8. So that's, you know, sniper rifle as well, 0 to 8. He's got a bad range. I guess he's got 8 to 16, which is not great, but still, you know, it covers a lot of ranges, and he's way better than he used to be. And he's an option now. He's one of those things that I'd swap out to use for fun. But if you have him, not bad. You know, you're not going to get laughed at now for taking him, so it's cool. Wild Bill. So Wild Bill for me is a little bit strange. He's really good if you can get him in the right position. And if you do get him in the right position, he actually feels a little bit OP. Like he can feel a little bit overpowered, just in the sense that you know, he's so good when he gets in the right range, especially against those little targets, like, you know, those small, those midfield units. Well, he's not great at dealing with units with mimetism, but he's okay at it because he has, you know, because he has marksmanship. So he's always getting a plus bonus for shooting anyway. You know, he's always ignoring cover, which can negate the -3 you suffered if you were, you know what I mean, right? So he's not terrible at dealing with those kind of units. And you know, he's got so many good things here. The BS attack +1 damage effectively turns his rifle, excuse me, into I don't know what's going on. Turns his rifle into a damage 14, so that's pretty good. Same with the multi pistols, go up to damage 14, +1 burst as well, which is just mental. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, BS attack shocks, everything shock, great. So that's basically he turns his rifle into a shock damage 14 rifle, very good. Marksmanship means he's hitting on 16s 90% of the time, as long as you're picking your targets. He is not shock immune, which is one of his massive drawbacks because he has no wound incapacitation. So this is a 2-wound model, but basically a 1-wound model. Because without the shock immune, where shock is everywhere in this game, he can go down. And with that consideration in mind, he might be a little bit expensive for some. I actually think his points cost is exactly where it should be for a model that's this good and does this one task really well. His 6-2 move comes into play so often, and I know a lot of people will be like, well, it's still 8 inches overall. But being able to, trust me, just 6-2 moving models are the crap, right? You're going to want that every game if you can get it. Every model you can get it on, because it just means that you're able to move across the battlefield and still engage units whilst moving that extra 2 inches, and that really mounts up over 2 or 3 orders. It mounts up a huge amount. Like, you know, it's the difference between making 3 moves and getting going 18 inches, making a 4th move and being in their deployment zone, you know, and shooting the entire time, taking face-to-face rolls and picking off targets. It makes a huge difference. So yeah, the 6-2 is really what makes him stand out with all of the other bits he's got in his kit. As I said, his main special skills really power up his base weaponry. His rifle is obviously a force to be reckoned with then. I'm not so fond of the contender. It has more use in a couple of factions where he's linkable, but on its own, I really do think you should take the rifle every time. You don't want to, you just don't want a contender. Like 9 times out of 10, you don't want a contender. It's great defensively, I get it, but you just want that extra range. Something that's important to point out as well is that a rifle's only good up to 16, but on this model, where he's ignoring cover, he's ignoring their cover, and then his base ballistic skill will only be modified by -3. So he's only ever taking the -3, which means you can still hit targets on 10s. That may not sound amazing, but out to 32. Like out to 32, he can hit things on 10s, you know? So that's still pretty damn good, you know, just looking at the rifle here. Yeah, up to 32, he's hitting on 10s. I just had to make sure because I actually sounded way better when I said it than I thought. I was like, am I right about that? No, I am. It's yeah. So what that means is that he can still take pot shots at targets that can't really defend themselves very well. At long range, you know, like someone's just like if you're dealing with a war or something, it would suck to go up against a war, but if you do need to get him through and you need to deal with a war flash pulse or a remote flash pulse somewhere, he's going to be able to throw some dice against it and not actually have that bad a chance of beating it. I mean, obviously that's not the ideal scenario, but he can do it. You know, it's pretty good. And at close range, this guy absolutely destroys. He absolutely destroys. 8 to 16, you use the rifle. 0 to 8, you just use the multi pistols. +1 burst. I mean, wow, they're just really, really good. Similar, it's just incredible hitting power. Actually, very similar hitting power. It's like having almost like a short range elf. In the sense that you're hitting, 3 dice with double action potentially, or with Shark with +1 damage. Just, he's really good. Yeah, he's really good. He's a fun character, and if you've spent all your SWC and you just want to have fun, you want a backup shooter, something that you can move up with those aforementioned coordinated orders that you need in O-12 to get them into the back line later on in the game, or just find that you're lacking guns or they've taken out all your big guns. He can be surprisingly effective. So yeah, he's still very, very good and definitely not a write-off by any means. Authorized bounty hunters. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. Never take any of these options unless they're linkable. Everything below the submachine gun, everything other than the submachine gun, unless they're linkable, you have better options in this faction for those points. They're all over the place, right? Um, with the exception of the submachine gun glue gun. So the submachine gun glue gun is just crazy good. As a cheap regular order, he's probably you'll get more use out of him than you will out of a Kappa because he's the exact same points as a Kappa, but he has decent range bands, decent close range, and the booty, which now gets a re-roll. And I cannot stress how crazy dumb that is. The ability to just go, oh, I don't like that roll. At least I get another shot at it. Means that he might turn up with a decent weapon anyway. So you'll wonder why you spent the points on a Red Fury, Spitfire, any of these things on this BS12 model for those points when you could just maybe get something decent in the roll. And if you don't, he's still doing what you bought him for. So why would you buy this guy? Well, BS12 is decent. All the stats are pretty good. BTS3 is above average. So if he does get shot with a BTS-based weapon, that's still a thing. Submachine gun good. Outcrack Cannon covers most of the ranges. So the glue gun outcrack cannon is good over 16. Submachine gun is good up to 8. So he's got a bit of a gap there. Which you might fill with a booty roll anyway. But if you don't, this is the unit that you can sit in the back line, sit on the corner, maybe, on suppressive fire or something later in the game if you've got anything else to do with him. Or using the Aqualak Cannon at long range and having, glue guns to cover your corners and stuff is still pretty good. I think that bounty hunters are good in most factions. I actually think that they're beaten by another unit in this faction for that role, but it's still a decent unit, and they're fun and they're characterful, and this reroll makes them kind of fun to use, so I wouldn't think too badly of you if you took him, but they are decent, and it is a regular order, so not bad at all. Right, let's have a look. Andromeda. Ooh. This unit. Wow, what a buff. Wow, what a buff. And what a cool unit this is now. It's hard to really get into just how unbelievably cool this unit is. The only thing that lets her down, literally the only thing, is that huge silhouette, and that can make things, traversing the battlefield difficult. It can also mean that you get picked off at angles you weren't expecting because you're just so large, you couldn't really hide yourself properly. But that out of the way, let's just talk about all the amazingly good things this unit does. CC21 is incredible. Combined with martial arts level 3 means that you get +3 physique and you're probably hitting on 24s. It's crazy good. That combined with guard means you've got that out to 8 inches both defensively and offensively, which is mental, just mental. CC attack +1 damage, so it's on top, by the way, on top of the martial arts. Yes, these two do stack, which means that she's actually getting +4 damage, which means she goes up to physique 16, which is, that's a meat grinder combined with the DACCW, means that she's not actually that bad at killing tags, like it's crazy how good that is. Courage, of course, you just don't want it running away when you don't want it to, so it's great. Forward deployment. This is, again, adding to O-12's ability to put out a massive models in the midfield. Just so many models in the midfield. I did race ahead a little bit, actually. I forgot to mention that she does have above average BTS and armor value, by the way, and an average whip. So there you go. Dodge +2, again, really good. Combining with the physique puts her up to a 15. Oh, sorry, I got that completely wrong. Instead of Dodge +3, it's Dodge +2 inches. My bad. Old Kinematica. That's the thing. Wish it was still called that, but I can understand why they changed it. So she's got extra dodge range, fair enough, but that's good because it means that she can dodge into close combat more reliably. And she's getting ever closer to her target if they keep failing to hit her, which they might do because she has mimetism -3. She has shock immunity, which is all important when combined with no incapacitation, so it's a 2-win model. Guard we've talked about, specialist operative, again, just so much. She does so much, and she's so cheap. Um, she's a midfield specialist, another midfield specialist with O-12. It is very possible to have four forward deploying midfield specialists, all doing different things, all capable of fighting, all being able to shoot very well in O-12. It is crazy good. So yeah, she's another one, like just crazy adding to that midfield presence. Looking at the profiles, same one repeated twice, but just with two completely different uses. Sticking with the forward deployment, I prefer this one, to be honest. It's nice that it's cheaper, but more importantly, I think that she's still quite an expensive model, and you'd want to pair her with other units if you want to use her later in the game, if you still want to use her as a specialist, and you want to control space in the midfield, then supporting her with other units is the way to go, and picking these top two profiles is the way to go too. They both have a flash pulse. I like the zapper on this one, but really, you can pick either of these two. Oh yeah, decharges, which is also hilarious. I have to mention that as well, actually. So yeah, with decharges not getting a minus and being able to be used with close combat skills like martial arts, basically means that she's going to be able to land decharges on a target at 24s or 21s, depending if they're martial arts or not, right? And it hits harder. It hits way harder than the DACCW. So if you do come up against a tag, you can reliably smack it, and then reliably smack it with decharges for that juicy AP and damage 14. So while you've got decharges, just use it. It's exactly the same as Uxia McNeil. It's so odd that they would give a model a DACCW and decharges. Um, depending on the target, because Fizz 16 is crazy good in close combat as well. But if the decharges and the AP is what you need, which you will if you go up against a tag, then that's what you do. But it's crazy that you can reliably just plant these on anybody now and have it hit harder than her regular CCW weapon. So if you do have the chance to do that, you should do it. It's very good. Boarding shotgun makes her a more reliable shooter, but less dice. Of course, we all know what boarding shotguns do with the template option, but she already has a template option in the Zapper. So I'm not entirely sure if the boarding shotgun is better, and I still just prefer this model most of the time, but I wouldn't think badly of you if you took either one. But most of the time, you probably downgrade this one to the regular one. The infiltration ones is if you want to use her as a Rambo piece, really, and there's an assassination piece, which is very, very viable for. Not quite so good if that assassination piece is on a building, though, because you've got to be able to. She's got a big base size, and in order to get through small gaps, i.e., staircases, for example, you need to be able to finish your movement. You can go through the gap as long as it's not more than half your width size. Not smaller than half the width of your base. But you have to be able to end your move. You have to be able to complete your movement out of that area that's smaller than the width of half the width of your base, right? So, which may not happen because she's got a 4/4 move, and some stairs may even be too long for her to complete that. Which is why I'm not a massive fan of the infiltration model, because it really only has that one use as an assassination piece. But if she does get a lot of targets that are grounded or not that hard to get to, yeah, she'll wade through them. She's really good at it. She's pretty much guaranteed to kill whatever she touches. So as long as you've got targets, you can use it. But I can understand why you wouldn't take this model, and that's why I favor this model because. But it's if she's out on her own as well, which is always scary for you. But I can see why you would, and she's very good at it if you choose to use her for that. But she is substantially more expensive, so there you go. You get what you pay for. War calls are war call, standard thing that you'd expect. War calls are always good, covering the back line. If you have 3 points, I mean, there are lots of things you can upgrade for 3 points, but if you want an extra order, which you can convert with your free command token if you're taking the Alpha unit, um, then you get that, and you get extra backline defense. And war calls can be surprisingly good. So, number of times I've had my arse saved by a war call. I'm sure a lot of us have stories like that. So there you go. Miranda Ashcroft. This isn't going to be very long. I don't think this character is bad. I just don't think in O-12 you're going to need this character at all. I think everything that she does can be done better by another unit. O-12 has very specialized units, and there are more individual specialized units that are better than Miranda. Trying to figure out what she does really, really well. Nothing. She does super well. When she's linked, she can be really scary, but unlinked, CC attack, okay, fine. She's got the old icol. She's hard to hit in CC, but she has no mods to buff the CC, so she may miss. I know it's unlikely, but she's not good at dealing with other people who have martial arts, because they made me totally negating this CC -6. And then you're just faced with the fact that she's just CC 19, and you might have minus modifiers coming your way. So you need to keep that in mind. If she wants to hit something in CC, she should be doing, picking off targets that suck at it, basically. Ballistic Score 12, which is, about its average. It's not bad. On 1, BTS 3, with 13. You can use her as a specialist, which is great, and this is the thing, and this is what I think would make this unit way better, right? If she just had some kind of forward deployment skill, just any kind of forward deployment skill, so 4 or 8 inches, would just be fine, because that would mean that she's a decent midfield specialist. Again, in O-12, you've got tons of them. You wouldn't need her anyway. But just in general, I think that she would be more useful if she had some kind, or at least like one of these profiles had a forward deployment option, to balance it out. But she does have a few things, but it's not, she doesn't do any one thing particularly well, and I just think you have better options in other factions. I will talk about her at length, because there are other factions that she shines in, but this is not one of them. So we'll move on. Cube Jager. I'm a fan of these. A lot of people aren't. I actually think they're really good. I think what they fill a role is of a unit that can, when you've got to the end of your army list and you need another specialist, you took a lot of guns, but you really like the way your list is shaping up, and you want something that isn't going to be picked off easily, because a lot of the midfield units, yes, they're great, but they're visible, they're on the table. If you want something that's sneaky to come in and push a button, or sneaky and come in and do some of the stuff that this guy does, then this isn't a bad option. The only thing that's odd about it is the SWC, but we'll talk about that. So CC 16, it's okay, better than it used to be. Trust me, it used to be 14. That was sucky. So it's 16, cool, way better. Ballistic 11, meh, okay. It depends, because of what this unit does. That ballistic skill doesn't. Oh, that number isn't as truthful to how this unit performs as you might think. Fizz 10 doesn't matter. It's got monofilament for CC. It sucks at dodging, obviously, because of Fizz 10. But the way this unit is used again, it's yeah. Whip 13, good, decent specialist, fair enough. Arm 1, BTS 3 again, better BTS, cool. Medkit, so interesting. So this unit is a paramedic in both profiles, and paramedics have been buffed in the sense that they just go on straight on your target's physique. So whoever you're trying to medic, it's on their physique, flat, no modifiers, right? Which is better than it used to be, because it used to be at a -3, which means that you can, depending on the target, is based on how good this guy actually is. So you might find that you're picking guys up on 11, 12s, 13s. If it's a midfield Rambo unit that's run up the table and has a fairly decent physique value, then yeah, you can come on and do the doctor role. It's not that bad at it. Immunity shock, that's just a cool thing. I mean, he hasn't got no kneecap or anything, or anything like that. It just means he's not going to get wiped off the table. But to be honest, for a unit that's probably going to be operating where this unit is, in your opponent's half of the table, you probably wouldn't have run a doctor up there anyway. It's pretty niche that someone would be able to come in and rescue him. So it's a thing. Stealth, very useful for what this guy does, absolutely essential. And in the games that I've used him in, if he didn't have stealth, I don't think he would be worth worth dealing with. But yeah, because he does, he's actually pretty good at this. And Parachutist basically gives him the role that I've been talking about, coming in the side of the table, catching people at odd angles they just never expected. It used to be terrible. Parachutist is way better now. You don't need to decide where he's coming on. You can just bring him on. So that's decent. That is really decent. Okay, these two profiles do two very different things. So it depends on what you're planning on taking this guy for. I think at 21 points, he's just edging into being too expensive. I mean, he's expensive anyway, but um, he's just edging that little bit too far for me. Basically, what you want this guy to do, he's got a couple of niche gimmicks that are actually quite good. So you want him to come on, be a specialist, do what he does with the buttons potentially, and then be able to engage a target round a corner, catching people out of cover, killing him on 14s, which is why I said that the ballistic skill doesn't really tell you the whole story, because a lot of the time where this guy could be positioned, he's going to catch people out of cover. And the emitter is actually a really good weapon now. So if you don't know, it's an EM gun. I'll just bring this up here. So it's an EM gun. I can't remember the exact. Yes, that's it. It's up to 16 inches. Yes, it's burst one, which is not amazing. But what you're going to be doing with this is coming around the back against a tag or something, right? They didn't expect you to come on from the angle you came on at, and you get a shot at that. If you get a shot at the tag, hitting in the back, you're going to be hitting on 14s. Yes, I know it's not incredible. Shut up, Pano players. I get it. But 70% chance to EM them is pretty good. And once they get hit by EM is terrifying. And he might be able to just pop around the corner, take a shot at it, and then pop back. If he doesn't get it, he might be forcing that tag to turn around if he hasn't hit EM, if he hasn't done the EM effect. And then if he has, he can wander over to them and hit them with that monofilament. And that's what's really interesting about this profile, and probably why it costs 0.5 SWC. And again, he's doing that CC on a 16, but that's 80% chance to hit. That's not that bad when you look at it. And you know, and he's going to get, if he's immobilizing him, he's going to get a lot of chances probably to whack at that tag or that other unit. He's really good at just picking off stuff that doesn't deal with CC or, you know, very, very well. So he has a few uses. He's a good all-rounder, and the fact that 19 points, if you do have that 0.5 SWC, I can understand why you would take him. If you haven't got enough for a Delta Troop, which we'll talk about in another video, then I can see this guy being an option. And the usefulness you'll get out of him really just depends on your list and the kind of units you like to play. And I know I'm in the minority with saying all of that, but I do quite like this guy. Casanova's a weird one. I really like Casanova on paper, and the only thing that makes him maybe not wanting to take him is that the role is covered by a couple of other units in O-12 because they have access to so many units, which is almost a shame because I think he's really, really good. Okay, the model's a bit strange, but I don't know what to harp on about that because it just I don't think it's what anyone imagined it would be, but still this profile is very good, does a lot of things very well. Okay, so we'll start at the top. The CC is great, the ballistic skill is great, everything else is pretty standard except for that BTS, which is just mental, right? So looking at this, martial arts giving him that +3 and that +2 physique is really, really good. Yes, I probably got that wrong. I probably got that wrong all the way through this video because it's been so long, thank you COVID, since I played. And I thought I had it. Oh, yes. So in a couple of the other models that I talked about having +3 damage, I was wrong. It was +2. So Andromeda would be getting a 15, not a crazy 16. So in this case, he's getting a +1, +3 attack mod, no bonus to enemy thing. How am I reading this? Okay, +3, -3, +1 damage. There I was thinking I'd memorized it. So he's getting a +3, -3 to them, but he's also getting a further -3, which means it's -6 to them, which makes him really good. Even good at taking on other heavily decent CC units as well, stuff like JSA and stuff, their kind of units. He can actually take some of them on. I mean, it's risky, but you can do it. Courage, obviously you want that on your characters. Forward deployment +8. Again, here's another one to add to your midfield army that you can take in O-12. I think it might almost be possible to have your entire almost your entire army deployed 8 inches up the field with O-12. It's pretty mental. Dodge +3 for the dodge roll, which is just brilliant. It is a bit odd that he doesn't have dodge +2 inches though, which the old kinematica, but fair enough. He's easy at dodging though. He's going to be doing it on 14s. That's not bad at all. Shock immunity, which is what you want when you've got no wound incapacitation. It's a 2 wound model. He's the kind of thing that you fire at someone. So when he's dead, but it doesn't matter because he's probably done his job, or that's what you were going to be using him for anyway. The Rambo. Mimetism -6, so he's going to get to them, so he's hard to hit and he's good at dodging, which is a good combination of things to have. Specialist Operative, stealth is what you'd expect from the stealth is what you'd expect. The Specialist Operative is just an awesome bonus. Okay, there's another midfield deploying 8 inches up the table. So good to have Specialist Operative on a unit like this. It means he can push a button and then go kill the thing he was designed to kill. SMG, which is funny because with the ballistic skill 13, it'd be like, oh, give him a multi-rifle, but that's probably too good. SMG is great anyway for the short range. If he wants to come around the corner and really make them sweat as to what he's going to do, or if he needs to do at least one more order to get to his target to smack him in CC, he can use the SMG on the way in, which is reliably on the way in, which is very good. Nanopulsar is good because he gets a template option with BTS, which works better against some factions, Ariadne. Pistol, of course, CC monofilament CW, and monofilament brilliant because he's got a crappy physique anyway. But yeah, we all know what monofilament does, makes them make a save on 12. Oh, they did outright, so that's cool. That's really, really cool. He's going to kill tags. He'll kill most things that he touches, and that's the thing about him. As I said earlier, though, is that that's not the first model I've said that about in O-12. There are lots of there's a couple of really good close combat models in O-12. One of whom we've already spoken about, Andromeda, that start up the field and can really do some damage. Maybe Lankai as well, but yeah. So he may not be your go-to option, but a decent option for that role. The only problem is he hasn't got any smoke of any kind, which he's not alone in that fact, but for this model to do what he needs to do, he really needs to be supported with smoke or white noise. You can do it. Luckily, as I mentioned already, you can do it in O-12, but still not 100% the all-round go-to model, but still very, very good. Octavia, weird model, great model in terms of the actual miniature. But in terms of gameplay, still not entirely sure when you would use this model. She's definitely better in vanilla factions because +1 BS +1 burst is not something you get. She doesn't get it in reaction, but she gets it in the active phase. So a burst 2 missile launcher is something you usually don't get in a vanilla faction. So she does bring that, but BS 12 not amazing. I would have preferred if she was BS 13, but then they were probably too scared because that missile launcher is very good. Missile launchers are great, so Courage, okay, cool. Sixth Sense, which does make her a better ARO piece, better at dealing with different situations, which is fair enough. She does have a contender, so she literally covers every single range. So as a go-to sort of overall defensive piece, she's not bad. But I think there are better options for that too. But it's not. You can see that there's utility for there, at least in that role. Dogged, cool. At least she's got some staying power with her only 1 wound and armor 2. But yeah, as we've said, the missile launcher contender, heavy pistol, that kind of thing. If a couple of things were different, I'd really like it if just for her, this missile launcher cost 1 SWC or something, then it would be like, oh, I could get a reduction if I just take Octavia, only Octavia, But as you can see, like she's not particularly good at any one thing, and there's a lot of things that, I mean, she's okay, she's got damage, but landing that on the BS12 model, and it's so easy to outmaneuver and outposition. The only thing I can see her doing is becoming like a late game threat where you've used her as backline defense to bodyguard effectively, bodyguard a unit, with a heavy pistol contender, and the fact that she's got sixth sense and stuff. And then later on in the game where things are out of position, you're able to take advantage of that. And then, her ballistic skill attack might go up to a 15 because they're out of cover or something, or that's harder to do in this game now thanks to the new cover rules. But if you do get that, she might be more effective, but still not sure what's going on with her. If any of you guys know what would make her better, you've got any ideas for that, I'd love to see that in the comments, because I really love the model and I'd really like her to get a slight rework. I'm just not sure how myself. But there you go. Flight Officer Agnes Ferreira. So Agnes Ferreira, not really going to get taken that much, I don't think, in O-12. I think there are, it's only one more point. Actually, now that I think about it, I was in my head. I, for some reason, thought Agnes was able to be your lieutenant, but actually she's not, and that just shows how little I've looked at this profile, because she doesn't really do anything. I'd still rather have a Kappa paramedic or something in the back line, because paramedic is a budget doctor and can pick people back up, or the Kappa hacker is even cheaper. 12 points or something if I wanted the specialist. I just don't see the position for this model, and she's got BTS 6 and stuff, which is maybe where this extra points are coming from. I'm not sure why you would take this model in 9% of the situations, so I think we'll just skip that one. Not sure. Shona, wow, hits like a truck again. Another CC specialist in this faction. Doesn't have the forward deployment skills that Casanova's got, but I'm still not sure if you would take her in O-12, because of the other models that you can take in vanilla O-12. Star Marder is a completely different kettle of fish, but in vanilla O-12, she's okay. She's got everything you'd expect from a hard-hitting CC model. In fact, she probably hits harder than most. So, martial arts 4, I'm going to get this right this time. It's +3, -3, and +3 physique. So +3, -3. So she's hitting on 26s, and she's going to be hitting on 17s. But then she has CC attack +1 damage, which means she's hitting 18s. She's not hitting on 18s. She's doing 18 damage. Okay, she's hitting with an 80 damage 18 in CC, which is absolutely mental. And she has CC attack AP, which combined with her explosive CCW just means that she shreds everything. So I think she's maybe better at different targets to Casanova. I don't want to compare the two directly. I think she's good at different targets, and she's cheaper. But because she's cheaper, you don't get the specialist operative, and you don't get the forward deployment, which makes Casanova probably more likely to get to his target than Shona in vanilla O-12. But she has, dodge +3 is great. She's dodging on 17. She's dodging an extra 2 inches. So unlike Casanova, she's more likely to be able to dodge into close combat. She has a stealth, which is what you want. No wind incapacitation, no shock immunity, which is, a problem. And super jump. So I would be quite cool with losing one of these skills and getting a points drop. Obviously none of the CC stuff, because that stuff's just fun. I'm just wondering whether she really needs CC attack +1 damage, because I'd rather she was cheaper with all of this stuff. Looking at this down here at the shooting stuff, she's not so great at shooting, obviously. So the submachine gun is really just there as a token thing, because, who'd go out without a gun of some kind. Nanopulsar +1 burst is actually the more useful of the two guns, and the flash pulse is good for, meaning that she can defend herself at ranges if she gets caught at an awkward angle. And the pistol and the CCW we've already talked about. So she is very good, reduces to rubble anything she touches, but there are alternatives, and that is the thing with O-12. There are so many choices. Casanova, really not that much more expensive. 5 points for a ton more utility basically does the same job. I'm not saying that Shona is bad. I just think in this context, with other models like Casanova available, not as effective as she could be. But, if you like this model, I mean, it's still a hard sell because she starts in your deployment zone. This is the thing, right? She's going to cost more orders to get there. She isn't as good at getting it. She isn't as good at defending herself from long range attacks as Casanova is. So yeah, maybe not, maybe not. But I still think that's just such a good model. It's hard not to want to take her just because she's awesome. Um, but yeah, there are alternatives. There you go. So the Rem Racer. So this is the first really N4 specific unit that we've really come across that I mean obviously other units only exist in N4 since N4 started, but this is a unit that's built around a rule that only exists in N4, and that's the units that have this kind of weirdness on their profile. And I want to do a video talking a lot about these guys. So I might come back to them when we talk about remotes in this faction, because it's hard to really get the breadth and really explore them out of the context of remotes. So looking at the stat line, completely standard with the exception of the BTS 6, which is there pretty much because one of them's a hacker. Gives them a decent hacking defense, okay? But what they really do is that for not a lot of points, they can slightly buff your remotes. Now, some people might think that these remote buffs are trivial, and others might think that they're enough. Even the +1 ballistic skill, there are so many good um, robots and stuff that you can take in O-12 that only really lack the ballistic skill. Takinis, for example, things like that. And that extra ballistic skill, it might be useful for 15 points. It's an extra order. You're getting a deployable repeater out of it. They've got a couple of things. I mean, like shotgun means it's decent backline and corner defense, things like that. So you're getting some utility out of it, and you're getting this extra benefit. These are the other two profiles are cheaper and also more situational, and they only really work with a couple of remotes in the game. Do you want to give +1 damage, +1 whip, +3 BTS to a Dakini? When we look at remotes, I'll go back into what we do with Rem races and what effect that might have on them. But off the top of my head, I've never really looked at the stat line and gone, nah, yeah, I really want to take a Dakini and one of these. I'd rather take a Dakini and an Evo an Evo remote, simply because you get to buff the Dakini, and that really is a nice combination. And I probably wouldn't spend the extra points to get these extra buffs, but I still think that there's definitely something that to these profiles, and that they really do shine with just used with very specific remotes. So that deserves another run through later on down the line. But the jury's still out on Rem races. This hacking device is probably not worth taking because it's the same points as the Cyber Ghost. I think the Cyber Ghost just does a better job, although you do get the +1 ballistic skill bonus to another remote, and you get a hacking device, a regular hacking device as well. But then you lose the other things that are on the Cyber Ghost if you're directly comparing like the pitches and the advanced hacking device. It's not called that, but you know what I meant. The hacking device plus, you lose the extra advantages there, but yeah, they do have some utility in it, and I'm definitely wanting to experiment with these guys and see how they shape up, and whether I really really got the use out of them. So Cycops, oh my goodness, this unit's very, very good, very, 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 very good. In my opinion, it might be a little bit too good because it covers so many sections and uses and skills and things you might want your army list to do, that it's almost like a one-stop sort of hole plugger, because you've got a ballistic skill 13, which is really good ballistic skill. And with some really good guns here. Physique 10 and stuff is pretty standard. CC, you're not planning to do that. Whip 13, decent. Arm 1 and BTS 6, that's really high BTS. Of course, one of them is a hacker. You've got two hackers here, so that BTS is going to help you out. Brilliant. Immunity shock. I mean, O-12 is so easy to support with the doctor and some Yud bots running around healing people up, and paramedics as well, because a lot of their units are immune to shock, which means they can take a hit and go down instead of dying. It's very good. Very, very good. Mimetism -3, which is just what one of the unit things that makes this unit so disgustingly good, is that they're not bad shooters and they're putting the mimetism down in a way. They look to me, they're like epsilons with all the rest of the equipment. You know, they don't have the Msv2, but they have all this other stuff. And they're all, every single one, and I cannot stress that enough, every single one is a specialist operative, which means that just taking one of these guys gives you an extra specialist in your army. In case you run out, your midfield gets wiped out, other units get wiped out, you've still got a guy who can shoot, who can provide your army with utility defensively, offensively, and can push buttons. Really, really good. Even just the Combi Rifle, probably the only one I wouldn't take. I think you just get much more out of these guys. MSV1, as I stated earlier, much more useful now. Can be good in different situations and can still combo with other units, the Varangian Guard, for example, which we'll talk about in the next video. Throwing smoke, and you can still do the smoke combo. It's not amazingly good, but with that. But if you want to use it, you can still put your opponent at minuses higher than the ones you're on. So I still think that's very good. But just having the utility as well of dealing with other midfield units, knocking out their MSV or their camo, sorry, their MSV, their mimetism or their camo, and still hitting on your 13s, really, really good. So yeah, that's a great one. The Nanopart. So this is where it starts to get really interesting, and we start getting like unique bits of equipment. So you've got a multi-marksman rifle here that I was like, oh, what? That's really good. There's only a couple of models that's been on. I believe it was only on the Diokai in the last edition, so this is pretty good. It just lets you hit with AP, it gives you the option of DA, so it's a more defensive thing. But you lose the MSV. But as a defensive unit, which this is seemingly designed to be, you get the biometric visor and you get discovery +3. So you're seeing through. You're not taking any of the mods from enemy impersonators, and you're getting a +3 on top of that as well. So I think that's really good. And obviously really good at dealing with other camouflage units as well with that Discover +3. So you're getting a different kind of utility there from this guy. The two hackers are pretty good. The only problem is that they're kind of a little bit redundant because the Cyber Ghost exists. Because they don't do anything better than the Cyber Ghost, but their whip is lower. They don't get the pitches, and they don't have a hacking device plus. Yes, they've got the mimetism, so they're a little bit better at shooting and whatever, and dealing with firefights because they get that ballistic skill 13. But I still think that O-12 shines when all the units are optimized for their specific role, and I think the Cyber Ghost is definitely more optimized than this unit for that specific role. But these two profiles very interesting to me. If you've spent all your SWC and you like a backup shooter or specialist, you really can't do better than these. I just wish the model was cooler because they gave us one of the hackers and I thought, oh, Cycops, they're gonna be mean looking, and she's cool, but she's a little bit flimsy looking, and I was expecting maybe if she'd had a bit more armor and one of the guns, maybe giving us some multi-marksman rifle so we could see what that looks like. That would have been cool. But still, they're very cool. There's a unit I used one of the LF models for a proxy because I just thought it looked cool in Nanopulse at +1 burst. I used what's his name? The Doctor. Sergeant the Dactyls. Someone will know what that is, but you'll be able to have a look at it. But his model is really, really good. He's got 2 pistols. He looks cool. Cool. So what are we on to now? So we got Ensign Catherine Cho. Catherine Cho, another amazing lieutenant. Combinable with so many units now. When she first was added to O-12, there actually wasn't much use you could get out of this hollow mask. There wasn't that much you'd want to hollow mask as. I often ended up hollow masking her as a beta trooper. Basically, the philosophy is that you want to hollow mask her as something that your opponent wouldn't want to approach if they can avoid it, and that the risk reward for them maybe guessing, thinking, oh, that guy over there is probably Catherine Cho, You want the risk reward to be, well, if it's not Catherine Cho and it actually is that unit, then they've taken on a very difficult unit and they might lose that battle, so they don't want to do it in the first place. That's the idea. The idea is that you just want to make sure that she's not too obvious. But we've had a whole bunch of units added to O-12 recently that she could easily holomask as, and she's just gotten better as a result. I mean, she's a cheap, decent lieutenant, right? And the fact that she can now hide as, for example, a Cycop or a Blue Coat, or, don't do a Kappa because everyone will take on a Kappa anyway. But those units are the kind of units you wouldn't want to approach necessarily. She can even go as a Nyoka or any of these light infantry that are regular, don't have roles. Like, you don't want to do anything like a bounty hunter because you won't roll for booty, or you can't do it as an irregular model because obviously you'll be regular and they'll spot that in your order pool. But you can um, holomask as so many more characters and things now. I mean, you could even holomask her as someone like Octavia, just because they'll be thinking, well, why would they take Octavia if they weren't going to use her? And if they're not very good at counting SWC, they might not realize that you probably spent your SWC and you don't have the SWC to have Octavia there. But no one's going to want to deal with someone who is good at all ranges, contender, missile launcher, heavy pistol, and is dogged. So they won't approach her. She's just got so many more things she can be now that just changes the game completely. So yeah, she's really, really good, and the chain of command is again really viable. I often find that I don't want to do it because it is a little expensive and it's pushing into alpha unit territory at that point. But I mean, you get so many more benefits with the alpha unit than just hiding her as chain of command. But there's no reason not to have both if you've somehow managed to get the points. I mean, an alpha unit plus third chain of command, I believe, is around 46 points, 44 points. Yeah, 44 points it would be to have those two. That's a big chunk of points. Yeah, you're getting 3 orders, but it's two models in your army that are just not doing anything at all. So I'm not sure I'd like her as a chain of command, but as a WIP 14 lieutenant, brilliant. And I mean, Shockmate is a bit funny because if she's dead, then you're probably a lost lieutenant, which means you probably don't have enough orders to get there and pick her back up. And if you pick her back up, she doesn't become anyway. But it's a thing. But yeah, she's still really good. Another great lieutenant option in O-12. Let's have a look down here. Where are we at? Where are we at? Cool. Blue coats. Oh, these guys are cool as well. The model's a bit Marmite. I personally love the model, but I know some people are a bit like, it's a little goofy, a little bit anime, but it's an anime game. What are you gonna do? These guys are really cool as well. In fact, O-12 just got so many cool units that they must have a fan. They must have a fan at Corvus Belli because some of these profiles are just fun, like really fun to use. I mean, this guy's great, and then when he's linked, he's even worse. So we'll talk about that in Star Marder because linked these guys can actually really be really funny and a bit silly. But just looking at the stats, great CC. They don't get any CC bonuses, but not being able to miss is a surprisingly good. Ballistic skill 12, Fizz 10. Whip 13, all standard, BTS 3, slightly better, but cool. Biometric visor, so immediately, straight away, you're getting we'll do that event, and we'll get this right eventually. Impersonation, you're getting your impersonation defense right off the bat in the backline, which is what you should definitely be using these guys for just as a baseline. If I want to include some impersonation defense in my list, I'd be like, well, I'll take the cheapest blue coat, why not? It does stuff. It does short range defense really well. CC attack +1 damage. That's just because I actually don't know why that is. It's in case you use the shock weapon, I guess, because the para CCW is done on their physique -6. So I don't know why that would be a thing, but cool. Courage is cool, always cool. Discover +3. Again, comboing with the biometric visor, and it's just good for hunting things that want to try and come and assassinate you in camo state. So that just gives you that defense. Natural born warrior, really awesome. Means that as a bodyguard, which is basically what this unit is, as a bodyguard, there's nothing they can do about your CC. They're not modifying in any way, and you get to take away their CC skills, which makes it an even fight with one of these guys. So it's kind of fun. I love the characterfulness of this profile because it really does. If the story being that if you want help if you're flying between the planets and you want help and you need to call the cop, you call the blue coats and they help you out. And this profile really does just sell all of that. The Sixth Sense as well just makes it even better. Defensive Peace Bodyguard. And this is the best bodyguard for your alpha unit, by the way, in case you guys are wondering. This is the one. This is the one that you defend your corners with. It does everything, deals with pretty much anything that can come his way. Although not so great at seeking out mimetism guys, but that's okay because you've got a template, and one of the best template options in the game. For most people, it's the scariest thing to come up against. The heavy right stopper is a huge ass template. So if they come around the corner, as long as you position correctly where they can't approach you without dealing with a heavy right stopper. Don't forget, Sixth Sense means that he can, if he gets shot in the back or something, he still turn around and heavy right stopper people or adhesive launcher them. So he's always going to be effective if he's the target. Yeah, it's really good. Heavy right stopper, horrible weapon to have to deal with. They won't want to go anywhere near this guy, and just by his very presence can really protect your lieutenant. And the adhesive launcher +1 burst is actually hilarious as well in the active turn, because effectively it's like a shotgun, you know, up to 16 that glues people down. Very good gun. A lot of fun to use. In Star Armada, Lynx you can get up to burst 3, which is just insane. The problems start coming in when we get to the other profiles. I think they're all I mean, we could go through them one by one, but you'll see what I mean. The only one that I really like as another lieutenant option is this one. But what I'd really like is to do Catherine Cho pretending to be the non-lieutenant option, right? So you haven't actually taken a blue coat, but what you've done is taken Catherine Cho pretending to be this one. So if you have a model, you bought the Star Armada box, that's actually quite a fun option. Because what they'll do is they'll look at it and go, if they know, they'll be like, oh, well, that's not the lieutenant profile. And they won't want to come near her anyway. Well, come near thinking it's the blue coat, they won't want to come near Catherine Cho if they think she has this stuff as in her arsenal, not realizing what she's being holo projected as. So they might think your lieutenant is elsewhere. So that's another bad option to holo project as. But if you are taking, you know, one of these two profiles and you take the lieutenant, it might be a bit obvious that it is the lieutenant. Yes, he's good at defending himself. He still has the heavy right stopper, but you know, by that point, he's probably too late, and he's probably going to die anyway. Or they might dodge into CC with you, and yeah, they're all right, but you know, he might last a turn, might last an order. That's about it. You know, I'm not a huge fan. There are better options out there, and that's the problem with a lot of these other options. Once you start getting into the more expensive options, like I'm not sure why a boarding shotgun costs so much more. Like it's what's that, 8 points? 8 points more. Costs 8 points more to have a boarding shotgun than an adhesive launcher burst 2. And yeah, I know they're non-lethal. That guy's all non-lethal. But you've got other stuff to kill things. You know, he can glue things down and then something else can kill it. And I'm not sure why you'd want to pay so much of a premium. I mean, like the Shock Marksman Rifle and the BS-12 guy, well, that's as expensive almost as the Cycops, who's a much better, well, he's a better shooter and has the mimetism. Excuse me. You'd want to give the gun to him, you know? So I'm not sure about that one. Same with the Red Fury. Same argument with the Red Fury. There are other guns which still gets to that 25-point price range. I mean, you can get a Team Sirius Red Fury for that, you know? And you get Sirius Pot with that, which also has the heavy right stopper, not a light one, and the other utility. Anyway, obviously I don't need to go on about that. These three not so good. These two a bit iffy, but this one absolutely exceptional. Okay, guys, sorry about that. I had to go away for a second and answer a phone call, but yeah, let's have a look at the Lore Keepers. So, love the design of these guys. Love the Judge Dredd reference. Really, really cool. In fact, I like everything about this bike unit. And with the change to how Impetuous works, bike units are just way better than they used to be. The only problem I have is that this unit is just not very durable. It's the only issue I have. And I would like to propose a change to all the bike units in the game, or at least some of the bike units in the game. Okay, here's what I would suggest. Bike units, you know, they're impetuous. They're all impetuous with the exception of, I believe, the Dynamos. Dynamos in Tartary Army Corps. But it doesn't matter really, because all the bikes, just for having a bike, can't claim cover. Okay. Which, when you look at a unit like a bike, you're like, well, the bike itself is only ever going to add armor or add durability to the guy on top of it, right? Because, well, especially with the design of some of them, not all of them, but some of them, right? What I would like to see is, seeing as this guy can't claim cover anyway, I'd like to see all of the models that have a bike get an armor of at least 3 when they're on the bike. 3 would be a perfect number because a armor 1 model in cover is armor 4, effectively, right? So it's still less than any other model in cover unless they had armor 0. And then when they're dismounted, I would like to see them. Sorry, I've just gone too far. When they're dismounted, I'd like to see them go down to their original armor value. Okay, which would make a lot more sense. So I think a lot of people, I know they like to complicate things, but I think a lot of people would easily be able to go, he's off the bike, he's armor 1. It's quite an easy rule to remember, or at least, as long as I don't suddenly go, like maybe the Montesa Knight or something might be higher up the chain than that. It might be 5 on the bike and then 3 on the ground. But can you see what I'm saying? Less armor off the bike, right? And also, I'd like to see it so that they were less, maybe not impetuous off the bike, which might give you a better reason to get off the bike. Because a lot of the time there just isn't a lot of reasons to do that unless you're a close combat specialist on the bike. And there's a fair number of them, but I don't think there's enough either close combat, close range, whatever, right? I don't think it's going to happen that much, and there's not a lot of incentives to do it and to use that cool rule. It's a very, very cool rule that you can get off the bike and run around as a normal person. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Anyway, but looking across, he's better than usual average guy at CC, so that's cool. Ballistic skills 12, better than at least a grunt. The other two are standard. Phys 11 to whip 13 is pretty standard. Armor 2, even on the bike. And BTS 3, and of course that big silhouette, size 4 silhouette, which is the big drawback of bikes, but they're usually costed appropriately. I actually think this guy's a little bit overcosted. I think he's a little bit expensive, just a little bit for what he does. I'd like to see 2 points off all of these, but anyway. +1 BS tech +1 damage. That's just to keep in line with the Judge Dredd aesthetic, which is kind of like with the multi-pistol. We just want him to hit a bit harder, which means that even the Combi Rifle options can hit pretty hard, which is nice. The boarding shotgun damage for 15 is good as well. Courage, well, you could expect that, is Judge Dredd. Dodge +2 inches is also really interesting. It's Kinemasker, basically. Extra dodge range, which is always handy. Mimetism -3, which is, again, really, really good. That's great. A lot of bikes have it, though, so it's nothing super special. Oh, they've written impetuous here. That's interesting. Okay, so looking at the actual weapon profiles, the boarding shotgun is great. I would rather have one of these specialist operative profiles be the boarding shotgun to make them a little cheaper, but okay. Boarding shotgun, as I said, at damage 15 is great. Multi-pistol, brilliant. The only problem is, I'm not sure which one would be better. Would it be better to just have the boarding shotgun at close range or use your multi-pistol? I guess it's kind of up to you to do the maths on that, because I can't bother to figure it out right now, but I might suspect that it really just depends on the target, whether you want to use the AP or whether you want to use the double action rounds, whether you'll want to do more damage that way, but then not get the +6 to hit. It's one of those things. But yeah, it's the cheapest one, but I'm not inclined to take this model if it hasn't either got the sidebot or if it isn't a specialist. So probably not going to see this very often. Red Fury is just a good extra gun. If you do have the extra SWC, he's not bad, but he doesn't have, this is the thing, he doesn't have any durability skills of any kind. So I would love to see dogging on this model. I think dogging on this model might make me really think about taking him a lot more than I do. I mean, I'll take him because he looks awesome, right? I like to play for fun a lot of the time, and Infinity is a very balanced game, so you can use most of the time use a lot of what you want as long as you know what you're doing. But I can see why people wouldn't want to take him, because he's just going to take one hit. He's only armored 2 and he can't get cover. It's not the best. And a Red Fury, at BS12, it's more dice, but if you haven't caught them out of cover, you might not win the face-to-face roll and you're going to go down. And I'm not happy with that. So I think you're not really working out well. It's the same argument with the Team Sirius You know, very similar stat line, only Team Sirius is more durable because she can take cover, you know, so I'm even less more inclined to take the Red Fury option on these two. The specialist options, though, they're pretty good. And if you want a specialist that's also a decent attack piece and could get to where it needs to with an 8-6 movement. See, this guy doesn't. This is great because he doesn't need to be in the midfield, right? It doesn't need to start there because it can get there in 5 seconds. So that's really, really good, and I like that a lot. Um, Same with this profile. The sidebot is just the same model, but better. Does a similar job to what the Team Sirius bot does, only it has only got a light riot stopper. Rem Racer wise, it's actually one of the better contenders. So if you wanted to bump the CC of something up, then this is a really good candidate. It's actually got quite a good stat line to begin with. And with the Rem Racer buff, it's pretty good too. So I like that a lot. Yeah, just having a look through here. So yeah, it's not a bad unit, but I can totally see why people wouldn't want to take it. It's a bit of a risk for a lot of points. Maybe you'll get more play out of a Cycop or something like that for this points range. But if you like this kind of model, then there's no reason to take this instead of a Cycop for a similar, you know, similar role as a semi-attacking model that can do other stuff. So I like that. I like that about Lore Keepers at least. Nyokas. Okay, interesting unit. This is a weird one, actually, Nyokas. Because they're really cheap. They're really cheap for what they are, but I really do think they were built from the ground up to be something that Star Armada uses and takes full advantage of. Because in terms of what they actually have, you're kind of looking at Kappas in a similar way, where you just wouldn't take these if they're not getting buffed in some way by a link team. You know, they're if they're not getting that bonus, there are just better people to give those guns to in this army, especially the HMG at 28 points. I mean, there's just a Dakini. Just take a Dakini. You know, support it with an Evo bot that has synergy across your entire army, and you've got a guy who is effectively Blizzard skill 14 with a Dakini. If you have a Rem Racer who's Blizzard skill 15. That's if you want to use it for that, but you know, again, that's debatable. But there are just better places to find an HMG. There are so many good HMGs in this army. I think there are better places to find an HMG. So again, same with the heavy rocket launcher. Yes, heavy rocket launchers do have burst 2, which is an advantage over the missile, but they don't hit as hard. Yes, you get templates out of them. 19 points on 1 SWC. Pretty cool. As a backup thing, you might take this because you've got an SWC left and you've got a few points, and you just don't know where to spend them, and you're like, an extra gun, you know, that's cool. But if you do have that similar number of points, I mean, couldn't you? No, she's quite a bit expensive. Never mind, scrap that, reverse it. I thought Octavia was cheaper than that. I forgot how expensive she was. Never mind. Yes, Nyoka. Think of it as the cheap Octavia. You know, they do get BS Tech plus 1 damage, which is cool. Plus, you know, it's damage 15 on the heavy rocket launcher, which does make it a little bit better. Courage, shock immunity, which is pretty standard for this faction. Oh, the climbing plus, which I forgot to mention, means that they can be the backup shooter. They do a little better because they can sit behind a building, defend that back lane, and then get up on top of the building pretty easily and start to, you know, maybe take the place of the sniper that died or something like that. So they're not terrible because of that, but I still think there are better places to find these guns. The parachutist is interesting, but I still think the Delta unit, which we'll talk about later on in another video, is better, way better, way better. So again, I'm just not sure what to do with these in vanilla O-12. As I said, a lot of these units are designed, like the Nyoka is pretty much designed from the ground up for Star Armada to fill gaps in there. So I do kind of like this one, being a specialist parachutist that can come on with a multi-rifle. But I still think Deltas are better. So yeah, that's Nyoka's shame. I don't have a lot to say about these guys, but as I said, it's just, you know, it's a faction specific thing. And the last unit. So I want to talk about Parvati a lot more. I've already done it. I did an unboxing last week of Aristea, and I talked a bit about both profiles for her in Aristea and in this game. Infinity, of course, as well. And I like her a lot. I think she is exactly costed the way that I think she should be. And I talked a lot about that in the other video that I just mentioned. But I'm just going to quickly reiterate what I said there. She does everything really, really well. And the only reason you wouldn't take her is points. But it's not, as I said, it's fine. A lot of the time, you want to build your army that can get the most utility out of a doctor or an engineer, one or the other. Usually, trying to do both means that you've spread a little bit too thin, or you've got some guys over here who are meat bags and some over there that are robots, and you've got to have your doctor here and your engineer there, and you get more UD bots you have to buy and all that stuff because each got to have them. If you just want efficiency and you want it all in one place, not a bad shout. If you were going to take a doctor, let's say you took the Lambda, of course, right, 16 points, and then you took a Monstrucker, 12 points, that's 28 points, okay? If you 28 for 10 more points, you get a unit that's very fast, does a lot more than just the doctor and engineering, and is better at both of those tasks than the aforementioned two models. Now, you are throwing all of that into one model, but she's not too bad. She's not going to die that easily. I mean, she's got 2 wounds, well, effectively 2 structure. She's easy enough to engineer herself, so if you're still taking the Monstrucker to keep her up. But again, you get 50 points for those two now, and probably with UD bots as well, you running into serious points cost, so I wouldn't do that. Again, she shines in Star Armada, but I'm such a big fan of this girl that I would write a list around her where she's supporting your heavier units and doing it so reliably with Whip 15. It's just, oh my god. As I said, I talked about it a lot in the other video, so if you want to find out how I feel about her, go see that one. And I'm probably going to talk about her in depth a bit more when I talk about Star Armada, but she's very, very good. And just having her available, she's fun. She's a cool looking model. Again, expensive, but I think she's appropriately costed for just how freaking ridiculously good she is at everything. So yeah, she can be your late game winner. I mean, she's not even that bad at shooting. A burst force submachine gun at BS12 and a 6.2 move is a backup shooter. You know, not as good at Wild Bill or a Cycop or something, but she's still good at it. With super jump to get anywhere, I mean, it's hard not to heap praise on this model. So yeah, like her a lot. So that is the end of the first part of this video. I cannot believe how long just talking about light infantry has gone on. So if you guys have made it this far, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching me rattle on about O-12. But I really wanted to get in deep with this faction because I don't think that people really delve deep into units enough. And I probably could have gone deeper, but hey, we haven't all got all the time in the world. So thanks you guys for watching. I am Seb.K, this is Assisted Fire. There's a bunch of links at the bottom of the screen for Tabletop Republic, my website and my Instagram. Go check that out, and if you liked what you saw here today and you heard here today, please subscribe. Please check out our other videos for other games, things that we do at the store. But until next time, guys, I will see you later. Have a good one. Don't forget, you can join me in the next video for part 2 of this video, where I'm going to be going over medium infantry, heavy infantry, and skirmishers, stuff like that. Probably wall bands as well. So yeah, for more severely in-depth chats about O-12, tune in next time.